So this happened with Deity Free D, and I heard the American Atheists saying this as well. Even though they're talking about Jesus as a myth, they then say, yeah, Paul was probably the one that invented and spread Christianity. Now, the funny thing is that we have a hell of a lot less evidence for Paul than we do for Christ. The figures that we recognize as Paul, which one we call authentic Pauline sources, which are Romans, 1st, 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Philippians, Philemon, and I believe it's 1st Thessalonians. So not only do we have what's called authentic Pauline works, we have the pastoral epistles, which are, some people call them pro-Roman or anti-hardcore asceticism. We have material that, Ephesians and Colossians, where people look at it and go, what's trying to be met here, Are these supposed to be anti-Marcionite stuff? But they are too early for that even. So you have all this stuff within Paul, or people who are who either are Paul or writing under the pseudonym of Paul, or trying to convince people that this is an authentic Pauline letter or work. All of these works reference a guy named Jesus and the movement of Christianity. Or they reference and mention Jesus Christ. Now the earliest stuff, the authentic Pauline sources, speak of, death, burial, resurrection, Last Supper, things out of his life. But of Paul, we don't really know much out of his life, although what he chooses to tell us within basically Corinthians and Galatians. And then when we get to Acts, you can either view it as anti-Pauline or quasi-pro-Pauline, but it's definitely not a ringing endorsement of Paul. It could just be the same events from another perspective. So would you say Acts is the proof of Paul or his letters? But Christ, there's no evidence for Christ, right? Even though that, we have the four Gospels. Who cares if they became or were intended to be Holy Scripture or not? How does that have any bearing on these ancient documents talking about a man? Why were they written so late? Well, they weren't intended to be written at all, but the world wasn't fastly coming to an end. That's the hard, skeptical atheist in me saying that's why they got written down. Because everybody thought the world was going to end within the next 2 seconds. So people get ready. This is how apocalyptic, the earliest source of, Mark, people get ready. Whoa, and also how I used to view Pauline stuff, like, one will be staying, two will be left, like that within the Gospels, and then as well as Paul's real immediacy scurrying around. They didn't think that Paul didn't think his letters would be saved for any great time, and I'm sure many of the early Christians, they actually felt that, hey, the end times are right now. That doesn't mean Christ and it actually taught that, but that's how they heard it or understood it. Probably was more I firmly believe that many of the stuff that we think is end times isn't. It's actually warnings about the destruction of Jerusalem and the coming of the Bar Kokhba era, and then the revenge of the Romans, because people did actually have to go up into the mountains and hide, or act really quiet like nobody was home, Stay up on the roof. Don't go downstairs. Don't. Um, so they think Paul existed, but not Christ, whom more ancient people from a wider variety, many non-Christians mention Jesus and not Paul, and they're reliable historians. So I know Jesus was a myth made up out of whole cloth. Why? And there was a stupid thing by D to Free D. Well, didn't everybody in the world know who he was? He was healing people left and right. Faith healers were around a dime a dozen back then. And it was only the maximum was 5,000 people. 5,000 people in the corner of the world speaking Aramaic. That doesn't cause news to travel fast. Should everybody know the names of every holy man in their town? It's ridiculous. And even the Gospels talk about Simon Magus, or that's Acts. Or the New Testament even talks about these people who do miracles. In fact, in the Gospels, he said, there's a group of other people who are healing the sick. What should we do? And he says, leave them be. If they're not against us, they're for us. Don't stop them. Other people are driving out, demons. So it wasn't unusual back then. Or that wasn't an unusual way to get, your illness taken care of. That was pretty par for the course. So